There are several homeschooling myths, or possibly we might call them misunderstandings, that are often in the form of well-intentioned advice to first-time homeschoolers or people that are interested in starting homeschooling, and they ask around and ask questions about homeschooling. And I really think it's important to debunk these myths before you even begin homeschooling so that you can start off on the right foot in your homeschooling journey. So in today's video, I'm going to talk about 5 of the biggest, I believe, homeschooling myths that I've been thinking a lot about lately, and I wanted to share them with you and what I believe is really true about these specific areas in homeschooling or concerns about homeschooling. So if you're interested in homeschooling, if you are beginning your journey, if you're brand new to homeschooling and you haven't really got your footing yet, stick around because there might be something that you need to learn about in this video. So the first myth or advice that a lot of people tend to give is that homeschooling is easy. Anyone can do it. And I find that misleading because in truth, homeschooling is not easy. It really requires a huge commitment, and it really has to take priority over almost every other aspect of your life. If you have a job, you really have to figure out how you can prioritize your children's education. If you have other responsibilities in your community, at your church, homeschooling really has to take a priority. It takes you having the right mindset and knowing what your homeschooling philosophy is and what your goals are in your homeschooling journey. It's not just a simple thing as pulling your children out of school, buying a few books, and then passing on an education to them in some kind of way of osmosis. It really requires more planning and preparation, and it really requires a full commitment. And if that's something that you don't feel you can give right now in your circumstances in your life, if you feel that you don't want to have to spend so many hours in a day with your children, that you might rather go into the workforce or have time to go to the gym and go out for coffee with friends. And it's not that you have to give up everything in your life, but homeschooling is a big commitment, and it does require you to prioritize it above many other things, including, it really becomes part of your family. Homeschooling is part of your family life. It is incorporated into everything, and it can't just be the smaller 10% and then you're done, check, and move on and do all the other things that you really want to do. You've probably heard the argument that parents' love for their children makes them the best suited for the job of teaching their children. And while yes, loving your children and wanting what's best for them is a factor, that in itself is not enough. That in itself doesn't cause you to invest your time and energy and even money into investing in your children, in finding out what should be their best interests, what should they be learning, what style of learning is best for them. Often, homeschooling moms are most concerned with what best suits them, what is convenient for you, what will be the easiest thing to do so that you don't have to spend a whole lot of time preparing and spending time in school. It's often about what's the most convenient for the homeschooling parent. To make a long story short, homeschooling is not easy, and for people who just want to pull their kids out of public school because they're having a hard time, because they're not liking their teachers, because they, whatever it might be, they want to protect them from the things that are going on in school. Maybe they're even bullying, to say, oh, well, homeschooling is easy, anyone can do it, is a bit of a misleading statement to make. And I think it's important to be aware how hard homeschooling is and how much time and effort we really need to put into our homeschool kids. Another myth, which is really linked with the first one, number 2, is All you need is an open and go curriculum. That is also very misleading. There is really no such thing as an open and go curriculum. As a homeschooling parent, we really do need to, at least in the very least, look ahead, know what the plan is for the week, for the day, know what we're going to be discussing with our students. It really is difficult to be a good leader if we're just as surprised by what the day is about to, how the day is going to proceed as our children. If we're just opening up the curriculum, okay, now this says we're going to, and it really, it takes up a lot more time. And when our children have a minimum amount of attention allotted for each subject, because as they grow, their attention will grow, but when they're younger, they only have a certain amount of attention that they can give to that particular subject. And when a lot of that time is wasted on us trying to figure out what the lesson wants us to do, reading through the instructions. Oh, and then we've realized we forgot to print out certain things that were supposed to go along with it. We didn't prep something. We forgot, certain books that were to go along with it. We were missing out on half of the lesson plan, supplies. And it really does require preparing ahead of time. So even with those open and go curriculum, it's really important to, ahead of time, look through the week's lessons, look through what you will be teaching, understand it yourself as best as you can so that you don't have to fully just rely on reading the book like a script and not understanding how you can guide your student by sometimes needing to word things in a better way. Sometimes curriculum are written in a way that our children don't really understand what it's saying. And so by us knowing ahead of time, we can be prepared to act as guides to help them through the curriculum. By looking through the curriculum for the week in advance, or at least the day before, the night before, we're helping the lesson plan not feel stressful, feel rushed because we're just trying to figure it out and then get it done because they're wiggling in their seats and they can't sit still anymore. And it really also makes us look more competent in our children's eyes when we know what's going on in the lesson. Number 3 is also linked with number 1, but I wanted to really hone in on this myth that anyone can homeschool. Now, while it is true that anyone can learn how to homeschool, anyone up front really can't just homeschool, because again, it takes preparation, it takes commitment, it takes wanting to be a continued learner yourself so that you're always one step ahead of your children. We often love to learn along with our children, but if we are truly learning with them and we have no idea what these topics are all about, if we don't understand even in a way some of the subject matter, we're really not doing a good job as homeschooling parents. So we do need to lesson plan. We do need to put time aside to prepare the lesson. We do need to continue learning ourselves. A lot of us, we homeschoolers tend to really not think highly of the public school system and public school teachers, but they really do a wonderful job preparing lessons. There are some amazing teachers out there that put a whole lot of time and effort, and they don't have the curriculum that we have as homeschoolers. They're piecing things together on their own, they're given a sort of a rough guideline by the province or the state, and then they're piecing together their own lessons from resources that they have researched and found themselves. And these are the things that a homeschooling parent really also should be doing to really maximize our children's learning experience. And knowing ahead of time, being prepared, reading ahead and knowing the material and understanding it so that we can answer questions, that we're not going along with them and I don't know what this means. I mean, it's okay to not know everything, and it's good to be able to admit to our children when we don't, but we can't be so ill prepared that we don't understand the lesson, that we haven't read up on it, that we're just literally learning along with them. As guides, we need to be one step ahead of our children as much as possible. Now, for those people that just can't do that, I believe that homeschooling is not for everyone. I believe that you shouldn't homeschool if you aren't able to do the minimum of being ahead, of reading the lessons, of preparing a lesson plan, of putting in the time and effort and energy into preparing an education for your children. If you can't do that, if you just dream of just having a book and plopping it in front of your child and saying, here you go, do these pages and you're done, check, go out and play, that isn't homeschool. That's not what it's meant to be. And it's wonderful. It can be a wonderful, wonderful thing, but it does require us as parents to put in the time and energy. In addition to our jobs as parents, we have to put in the time and energy as their teachers. And even when our children reach the stage of being able to fully learn independently, because that is a goal as well, we do want them to at some point learn how to learn and do it independently. We're not just saying, okay, go learn on your own. Here you go, figure out what you want to learn. We are still guiding them. We're still providing them the material to read from. We're still making the good selections because we're older, we're wiser, and we help direct and guide them in the direction that they will go in their education. And so we are still needed, even in those stages, to follow along with them and guide them in even the later years up to high school. This next myth, number 4, is also a relatively newer realization to me. I always believed that homeschooling was all about fostering a love of learning. And it becomes a very crushing realization to new and seasoned homeschoolers when you realize your child doesn't love learning. In fact, they might hate every bit of it. And then you believe that you are a failure. And then you're scrambling, trying to figure out what can you do differently? What's wrong? Maybe they need to go back to public school. Maybe you need to, maybe I'm just not a good homeschooling parent. Maybe I'm not doing a good enough job. Well, what I have learned is that homeschooling is about fostering a love of learning, but it is not about the process of learning how to love learning. It's the end result of homeschool. Our homeschooling journey will, if done correctly, is about resulting in one day that they will love to learn. They are not going to necessarily love learning at any stage of the homeschooling journey, but at the end result of their education in their elementary, middle school, and high school years, the end result is the love of learning. So if along the way they hate math, they hate writing, they hate reading, all of those things, it's okay if they hate it. They don't need to love it. Learning how to love learning is a process, and they don't have to love it while you're doing it. So if they're not loving what you're doing while you're doing it, just keep going. You're not doing something wrong. It's about the end result. The end result and loving learning at the end result is not necessarily this person who just suddenly wants to learn all the time and loves to read. It's about that they learn that math and that reading and writing and possibly history and science and all the subjects that you're teaching them are useful for them. That they will see how it fits into their life and that it was important for them to learn, and they get it and they use it. And that becomes their love of learning. And quite possibly, they will continue loving to read and learn new things. But that is the end result of homeschool. And we need to get them from the starting line to the finish line and hope that they have fostered a love of learning. But along the way, moms and dads, if your kids are just not loving learning, it doesn't mean that we're doing something wrong. We focus on them in the moment and we're reading a book to them and they just don't love the book. This is boring. I hate it. We keep going. It's not about trying to find something they love right now, because honestly, children just love to play. If you gave a child the option, they wouldn't want to do any school at all. They would just want to play. And that is the way it's going to be no matter what kind of child you have. So focus on keep going, keep the momentum going, and realize that the end result is a love of learning. The fifth myth that I want to address, the fifth misconception about homeschooling or about education in general, is that learning is supposed to be fun. There are several education philosophers like Charlotte Mason and like Mortimer Adler that clearly state that entertainment is not an education. Learning is not about having fun. Playing games, making crafts, doing fun things in order to solidify the learning is not an education. In fact, they say the opposite is true. An education, it's meant to be hard. It's meant to be a challenge. And if they don't struggle with a topic, if they don't struggle even a little bit with a subject, they're not really learning anything at all. They're not getting anything new. If something is just easy, they're not learning something. It's just something that they already get, that they already know. In order to grow and mature, we need to struggle because that helps us. The struggle, the difficulty makes us mature, makes us grow, helps us to really figure out. We get the reward of being able to figure out the challenging material. And then it sinks in. It goes deeper into our knowledge. It becomes a part of our knowledge because we have struggled with it. So sometimes when we see our children struggling, we need to allow them to struggle a little. We can help them. We can go alongside them. But it's important for them to have the struggle, to figure out the material, to figure out the math, to figure out the book, to figure things out on their own. And they will then actually get an education. When we are just making things fun and exciting and entertaining, it becomes our responsibility to entertain our children. And education has to be on them. It's their responsibility. They are the ones that have to do the heavy lifting so that they can actually learn and grow in their knowledge. And of course, children need to have fun. Children need to have playtime, and most of their time should be fun and playtime. But when they are focused on schooling, when they are focused on gaining knowledge and an education, all it needs to be are reading great books, narrating back what they've read, and having a discussion. We don't need to make it fun. We don't need to have these fancy fun crafts and activities and games to go along with it. If you want to do that occasionally, I mean, you're not doing anything wrong, but it's not necessary. And those things probably aren't truly adding to their knowledge. But if we just help them do the heavy lifting in short, brief, 15 minutes on a subject, the Charlotte Mason's way is to spend a short period of time focused on the subject, narrating, discussing, done. Then they can go and have fun outside and play and have games. But those things really aren't contributing to their education. So I'm sure there are way more than 5 homeschooling myths and misconceptions. If you know any that I haven't mentioned here, please comment down below. I'd really love to read them and see what you have to say. I think that knowing these things are really helpful to people who are considering homeschooling, because the way we often see things, how homeschooling seems to be, is not necessarily the way it actually is. And it's important to know what we really should and shouldn't be doing as a homeschooling family and as a homeschooling teacher. But that's all I have for you. I thank you so much for watching. Subscribe if you'd like to see more videos like this one, and don't forget to like it, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.